Good morning. If you're watching this video, maybe you're thinking about getting one of the Umarex 68 caliber molds I make, or maybe you've already bought one and now you want to know what to do with it. So this is the basic mold right here. I described this in the other video, but basically that hole is slightly smaller than a standard BB. So if you're looking for something with a BB front or your pellet front, something like that, this hole works out perfectly. I don't use BBs too often. Typically I use something more like steel bearings, which can be gotten pretty cheaply, which work perfectly, or a variety of different pellets that are available. One of my favorites is the Predator Metal Mag, which is a steel tipped pellet, and that'll pop a hole through just about anything. Or even just your standard pellets like the Diablo Jumbo, which once again, just nice round front lead pellet. See if I can get that to focus a little bit. Anyway, just a standard pellet. But here's the cool part. You can do pretty much anything you want with this. There's no limits except your imagination. So what I'm gonna do over the next few weeks is try to do a video every week that has 2 or 3 different things that I make. And I'm gonna start out pretty simple today with 3 that I've shown online and showed in the previous video on how to make them. One is the most simple, which is just having a steel bearing. That's hot glue on it, and then this back piece catches the air and really moves it on down the barrel. That is a very simple thing to do. What you do is you go and buy a bag of 16 gauge wadding. This huge bag, which has, I think, 500 watts, you then take, and here's the standard wadding. Well, with that, I can cut the back portion off and use that for fletching on a round that needs it. And then the other piece I cut off because it's got those little grooves still on the end of it there, really digs in good to the hot glue and doesn't come apart. Well, that's one of the first ones we're gonna do. So we have a mold, we need mold release. I use this from time to time. It's just a standard mold release. You pay a little bit more for it, but I do casting as well, so it works out pretty well for me. But my results are every bit as good with just standard Sam's olive oil spray or some sort of cooking spray. Basically, you're trying to get a little bit of oil across the inside of the mold. Now you have to ask yourself a question. When I fire this bearing, do I want this to stay in the piece that I've made? Or because it's denser compared to the rest of it, on impact, do I want that bearing to keep traveling? Well, that's simple enough to do. If I use the mold release right now on the mold and then drop the bearing in, the glue's gonna stick really good to that bearing and the bearing's not gonna come out of it. Now, if I drop the bearing in first and now use the mold release, what's gonna happen is on impact, that mold release is gonna let that bearing keep traveling. The plastic and rubber piece is just going to fall to the ground. So you're going to get better penetration on whatever you're shooting. But in this case, what we're going to do is just shoot some mold release on it. And I'm going to do a couple of these, or let's do 3 just to kind of show you how I do it. I drop a bearing into each one. Okay. For me, I'm used to this particular AdTech glue gun. So I know with this Pro 80 high temp that 2 squirts from the glue gun, 2 full trigger pulls is about the amount of glue I want to use. So 1, 2, 1, whoops, out of glue. So we stick another stick in there. 2, 1, 2. Now, while it's still warm, we want to pop these in so they get stuck down in there. So they all become one piece and stay that way. And that takes a little bit of time to dry. So while we're doing that, let's talk about glue and glue guns for a moment. This glue gun I'm using works great. I like it. You might have noticed I was using this blue glue. That's from a company called Hot Melt. I found them online. I liked them. They have a variety of types of glue and a variety of colors. I just chose this one at random. There's nothing special about it. If you decide to do this, or especially if you decide to start doing things like polymer sticks instead of glue sticks or super high temp glue sticks, you have choices as far as glue guns go. Now, one of the other glue guns I have is a power hold. Now, this particular one's kind of a higher tech glue gun. This thing you can buy online for $50 to $100. Much higher temperature range. Instead of the standard 250, 280, I believe this goes up to about 400 degrees. So you can even have plastic, basically polymer sticks that you slide down and have a plastic and steel projectile or whatever it is you decide to put in there. It also heats the glue faster. You can, if you're trying to do production, you can really get it going quick. I'm going to move this right along because I am trying to keep this video down to say 10-15 minutes so you don't get bored. The next one is, let's go with this. Talked about this in the last video and showed it, and basically what that is 50 grains of steel shot. And what I did is I put 50 grains in, measured out, put in I think 20 grains of jeweler's glue, and with a whole plate of these I just put them in the oven and let them heat at 300 degrees for 15 minutes or so. It melted the glue, so now that's one piece. It's not coming apart. Now I have a hollow tube. It's not going to seal real well inside the barrel, so what I need to do is go ahead and have a glue tip around it as well. Now, the first time I tried to do this, I overcomplicated it a great deal. I took a standard mold like this, and then what I did is I created this steel and bushing system that is now down inside there so that when I slipped this in, it was a perfect fit. So I'd fill the groove with glue, I would drop this in and push it down, and then when it dried, I popped it out and I had a nice glue form around this and I was ready to use it. But again, there's release issues and things like that. So what I chose to do instead is you take your standard little cylinder like this, and this is basically just a little glass tube I bought online that had the right dimensions. It's tempered so it shatters on impact. And then this is a custom-made tool, cuts out 1/2 inch circles. So I pop this in, use it in the screw gun, drill gun into cardboard, and it's going to cut out perfect little circles for me, about like that. They sell these online really cheap. You don't have to make one. You can buy it for next to nothing. So then I'll take a little bit of hot glue, coat the end, and then pop my little cardboard piece in place and give that just a second to dry. And you may notice I'm wearing gloves. Wear gloves. Hot glue is very hot. And if you have a higher end glue gun like I showed you a minute ago, that thing can cause some pretty severe burns if you're dealing with real high temp plastics or glues. So now that dries almost instantly. We've already got mold release in the hole. So what we're going to do is, again, 2 squirts, 1, 2. Now there's going to be a little bit more resistance in this case because I'm trying to shove it into these grooves. There's not much space down in there, so I'll give it a good shove. And I felt it bottom out, so right now that's beginning to harden and do its thing. Once that thing dries, it's going to have kind of a little conical at the end because that's the shape of the inside. I use a razor and cut the end of that piece off so it's nice and flat. Or in the case of the shot ones, if I want to speed it up a little bit, I cut it flat and run a drill bit down in with a drill or even by hand because it'll cut right through the cardboard and glue easy enough. Then I've got that hollow area and that's really going to speed it up, make it impact even better. So you probably know what the next one is because I just showed it to you. This is the salt round. Now with the salt round, actually, you know what? Mess this up. That was the salt round I just did. So again, same thing. I put the little piece of cardboard on the end, glue it in place. I'm going to go ahead and do the lead shot one since that's what we just talked about. So a little bit of glue, a little piece of cardboard. Get that thing in place. So, like I said in the last video, you can tell I'm not a video professional. This is not what I do for a living. But it works basically the same way. This one's full of salt. You wouldn't want to use a drill on it because, well, it's going to let the salt out. You do cut it flat. Take that little tip and just take a razor and cut it flat because you don't want something to let the air force its way around it. If it hits a flat surface, it's going to speed it up much quicker. So razor, cut it flat. The salt ones are ready to go. In this case, with one of these, drilling the end out isn't a bad idea because the air pressure is going to make it go faster. But again, like the salt round I just did, 1, 2, and shove it down in there. And you feel a point where it just feels like it pops past the vacuum that's created by trying to shove this thing down in there, and there it goes. It just went in. That one's done. Now it takes a little bit of time to cool. And while it's doing that, let's see if there's anything else around here to show you real quick. Well, everybody has to start by making just a handful of little projectiles. Now these I made, this was the very first ones I did, very first night I thought I'd try to give this a try. Before I even owned an Umarex, I just wanted to see how it worked. I built 50 caliber and I built .357 caliber and just did a variety of them with steel tip pellets. That one's all plastic, and just kind of gave it a try, and they came out okay. And then since then I've done more and more to perfect it a little bit. What else is sitting around here? The salt. All this is rock salt mixed with cayenne and ghost pepper. Now that cayenne and ghost pepper on impact is going to aerate, so you're going to have a wound that has broken glass, broken tempered glass that shatters on impact, cayenne and ghost pepper, and salt. Makes for a pretty wicked little wound. One other thing, let's say you're trying to make something and you want to keep it pretty light and you don't want the glue running out the end. Here's another handy tip. These are called gas checks. They're used for reloaders, that sort of thing. They build them in a variety of calibers. The particular one I'm holding right here is .35 caliber. So it's .350 of an inch. They build them larger, and you can find one that's a little closer to sealing this thing up. But in this case, I still want it to have a little bit of a curve at the end. So if I take this little bitty copper gas check, see if I can get a picture of it there. This tiny little copper gas check, and it's even got kind of a ridge on one side. If you can flip that sucker over to where that ridge is facing down, be a little more aerodynamic. So there it is. And all I do is I drop that in, add glue, add whatever else I want into it. And at that point, once it dries, it's ready to go. And I talked before about just your imagination letting you do just about anything you want with this. Yesterday, just playing around, I took a little bitty cup. It was actually a paint can lid. And I put in Elmer's glue, sawdust, and some steel shot. And I mixed it until it was homogeneous. It was thoroughly mixed, and everywhere I looked, there was shot, a little bit of glue, and a little bit of wood pulp. I kept mixing that sawdust in until it was just almost a dry, flaky mix, and then I shoved it down in the mold, put a dowel rod in, and shoved it into place. It worked well. It was a very light round. It looked kind of like wood when it dried, and on impact it shattered, which meant the heaviest portion of it, the lead shot, kept going. Now I've got a few of these things cooling off, so I'm going to grab them real quick. Let's just see what the final product looks like. So, in the case of the lead shot, there you go. And as you see, it's just perfect little cylinder on top. So I'd either want to at least cut that flat or cut it flat and run a drill bit down in there to where the air can get in there and really push it along. The salt one, once again, came out just like the other one. Cut it flat, don't drill into it, or, well, the salt's going to fall out. And then this one is steel ball bearing, the glue, and then this for the aerodynamics. So there you go. Very quickly, very easily make these things. They're a lot of fun. They can be really cheap. I think I bought these for about 3 cents a piece because I bought 2,000 of them. The bags of wadding, 500 of them is, I want to say it's $10, $12. Salt's cheap, glue's cheap, everything about this is cheap. You don't have to buy expensive ammo. It's easy enough to make it yourself. If you have any questions, please leave comments. And once again, I'm going to try to do this every single week, give you a few different types of ammo to make. Thanks for your time. Bye-bye.